right, everybody, let's get started. This is Nic Danielson from Symetrix, and today we're going to have a look at designing control screens in Composer software. And it's actually been quite a while since we did a webinar on this, and there's been a ton of improvements in general workflow enhancements since then. So we're going to have a lot of good stuff to cover here. So what we're going to do today is build an interface to control your typical zone mixing type of site file. So just keep in mind that at the most basic level here, we're really just working with all the generic, general objects that are in Composer, be those faders, buttons, or otherwise. So no matter what sort of install you're doing, all these concepts are going to apply to yours. It just might end up shaped differently or have different control screen layouts and all that, but the concepts are universal, basically. As usual, this will be recorded for you to go over later if you want to freshen up on it. And again, please don't hesitate to ask any questions in the chat as we go along, and I'll do my best to get to those. All right, let's do a quick rundown of what we're looking at here. First of all, this is a bar/restaurant with a few different zones in it. We've got, of course, the bar area here up top. We've got a restaurant area down below. We got some restrooms and a foyer as well. The restrooms, the hallways, and the foyer will act as basically one zone in terms of what their audio sources are, but they will have separate volume controls. So that's it on the PowerPoint. Let's just hop over to Composer and have a look at the actual design. All right. So let's just do a quick rundown of the design here. So for the outputs, here's the zones we just talked about on that slide. Basically, we got the bar, the dining area, which is the restaurant, restrooms, hallway, and foyer here, going to an X-Out4. On the input side, we have a jukebox, and that is going to live in the bar, of course, and that's going to take priority over whatever else they're listening to at the bar. Jukebox, as you can see, comes in through a via, it goes into a mono priority selector. So whenever there's audio on the jukebox, it's going to duck out whatever's coming in on the BGM input. So it takes priority. Other inputs, we've got a couple satellite receivers, and we've got some background music, just some general background music. And we also have two of our XIO Bluetooth wall panels as well. There's one in the bar and there's one in the restaurant area. Those are controlled by these intelligent modules, which will be grabbing some, we'll be grabbing a couple elements from these for our control screens just to give them access to like pairing and that kind of thing. And let's see, in terms of source selection, we'll be using these input selectors, of course, here, one of these for each zone. Up top here, we've got our bar zone. Here's the restaurant, here's the other areas. Again, those other areas being the restrooms, hallway, and the foyer. So all of these three zones can access the satellite feeds and the BGM that's distributed by this via here, going into all three input selectors, just basically splitting off of the inputs up here. The restaurant and the bar, both of these places can select from their respective XIO Bluetooth devices as well. That audio is coming in over Dante from the XIO Bluetooth for each zone. The restaurant area and the other zones like the hallways and stuff, they can also tap into the bar feed. You can see it splitting off over here with the via. That's also an available input for these guys. Just, maybe on Saturdays they all want to party, so they just make it one big old zone. Just listen to whatever's going on in the bar. And yeah, for the rest of the file, we basically have simple volume control here in the gain block, and then just whatever speaker management, some limiting and whatnot down the road here. Pretty straightforward stuff. But what should we put on the control screens for a user interface for all this? The typical in this scenario would be a source selection, of course, for each zone. And then, of course, volume and mute, which would be in here. And maybe an LED or a meter or something for some level indication, just to show that things are alive. Those are the basics. Anything beyond that would be kind of a bonus in a place like this. We'll, maybe in the bar, we'll actually throw out like a jukebox override LED, just telling whoever's using the screen that the jukebox is in control basically, and whatever source they select in this selector is, they're not going to hear the change because the jukebox is on. So we can copy over this LED to a control screen and let them know that the jukebox is in action. We can also give that Bluetooth pairing button that we talked about earlier as well. Give that to the bar and the restaurant. All right, now that we've got a rundown of the file here, let's make our first control screen. So there's a couple ways to go about it. I'm going to use Control Screen Manager. That's usually what I use to just start things off. That is found up in the Tools menu, Control Screen Manager, or Control L. That's what I usually do, is just hit the shortcut. So we just go ahead and make a new one. And we're going to start with the bar. So let's just name it. And we can just hit View and Close from here. And that's going to pop up our new control screen, which is just the dreaded blank canvas at this point, basically. The first step here is basically to give ourselves some real boundaries, some lines to paint in, if you will. So you'll notice we've already got some dotted lines here. It's pretty simple. Whatever's inside of this box is going to be on your control screen. Anything outside of it will not be on the control screen. So step one is to create your boundaries that are the proper size. Right now, as you can see over here in our properties sheet, our sheet size is 1024 by 768. We're going to go ahead and design this for a T5 touch panel is the plan here. So over here in the properties sheet, this is a good moment to get introduced to the properties sheet. This is kind of the cornerstone of control screen design. This is where you can change the properties of just about every single object you have in your control screen. Every object that you click on will probably pop up with some different properties that you can edit. It's where you take the default look and feel of everything and make it your own, basically. Okay, so the best plan, again, is to know the resolution of the device the control screen will be hosted on. That could be a laptop, it could be a Windows tablet, a T5. Control screens that are built with that proper resolution in mind from the very get-go, from the beginning, tend to come out a lot better, I will say. So let's start with our T5. So we go to sheet size and just choose our T5, and you can see that these dotted lines have now adjusted themselves to the 800 by 480 resolution. Another couple of quick notes, I guess, on resolution. If you're building for T5, it's obviously straightforward. It's an 800 by 480 device. Boom, you just select it and you're good. If you're building for SymVue for Windows, who knows what the resolution of the laptop or tablet or whatever it is that's going to be hosting the screen. So it's best to find out that screen resolution ahead of time. If you're building for control server, that's actually very flexible because the control server will automatically scale the control screen to fit on whatever device is running the control screen because it's hosting it in a browser interface. So you could pick a resolution that's fairly standard and easy to work with in Composer for that, such as maybe 1280 by 720 or something like that. Something that's a good size but doesn't, take up your entire canvas and to the point you're having to scroll up and down and that kind of thing. So in that case, the hard work of scaling is offloaded to the control server. So all right, let's look at our T5 here. And let's just get started building this thing. So obviously this is totally optional, but I like having a unique background image when I build control screens just to give a vibe, of sorts. You can always just use like a flat color, a flat background color, which is the default. And that is hideous. Let's get rid of that. So yeah, you can use just the flat color if you like, but I again like to use a bitmap of some sort. So if we go to use custom bitmap in our control screen background area here, we change this to true, and that opens up a bitmap file option. If we just go here, we can browse. Let's see, where am I? Symbols, yeah. So yeah, here's sort of a background image. And hang on, this is the interface for the webinar is in the way. Here we go. Okay, let me just get this moved over a little bit. Okay, cool. So here's our background. This could be anything you want. Cool background with branding, whatever. Ideally, it's best to size the image for the resolution of the screen. But if you don't have it perfectly sized, you can use this bitmap mode part over here, this area, and that's going to stretch out this image to the borders that we've defined with our resolution. So you could do a stretch or a center or a tile, just kind of depends on what your image is or what you want to do with it. You can get away with a lot with the stretch, as long as you don't have something that has like regular shapes on it that are going to be really obviously distorted when it stretches, but something like this is perfectly fine. So, all right, there's our background. Let's take a look at the title at the top of the screen. I usually like to put something like that just so people know what screen they're actually on, which makes sense. We'll do this with the text box. So if we go into the toolkit here in the lower left, we can just drag in a text object, and this brings up our properties, text properties window. So let's just start by typing in bar control. There is a bunch of options in here, but I usually don't do a whole lot in this window, just the way I like to work. The only thing I will do in here most of the time is I'll turn off the auto size. This basically makes the text box that we create to be automatically sized based on the font size and your whatever characters you've got in here. It kind of locks it into that. So for me, this isn't ideal. I like to modify stuff on the fly and have full control over stuff without having to go in and disable this again later. So I just kill it off from the get-go. Also, the other thing I always do is change the background to transparent. That's so whatever background we've got here will actually shine through. If you do an opaque background, there's just going to be like a rectangle, in this case, a white rectangle behind your text, and that just doesn't look good to me. So I always go for the transparent. And again, all this stuff can be edited later in the properties sheet. So if you change your minds, it's easy. Let's hit OK on that. And now we have our text object. And it's the wrong color, obviously, and it's tiny. So let's do some things with that. Let's make it look like an actual title. So we've got it clicked. It's lit up red. We can go back to the properties sheet here. And that gives us a bunch of stuff that's related to that object that we've clicked on, right? So I would, first of all, let's just change the font and the color to something we can see. So let's go into our custom font area here. I tend to use this Orbitron font. I just happen to like it. So, take your pick. We could do 28. Let's go bold. And now we have this. Let's make it white as well so we can see it on this dark background. There's our text color. And there we go. Now, of course, we need to resize it so we can actually see it, right? So there's a few ways to do this. You can go into the properties sheet. Pretty much every object that is resizable, if you click on it, there's a size and position spot over here in the properties sheet. You can go over here and just type in numbers if you'd like. I don't like to do it that way. That's pretty. That's kind of the long way around. You can drag these handles. That's an easy way to do it. And I'm still old school. Before there was handles, a quick way to do it was to hold the shift key and use your arrow keys. That's what I'm used to doing. So if you see me doing that, that's, if you see things moving without clicking, that's what I'm doing. So yeah, there's a few different ways to resize stuff. All right, so we'll put it up top, and let's move on to getting some actual objects move over onto the screen here. So we're going to start with our source selection. So I'm going to move this over so we can see this is our bar source selector right here. Let's double click it. And so pretty much any of these objects in these GUIs, these module GUIs, you can right click them and copy them over to our control screen. So we can kind of cherry pick, just pick and choose whatever objects we want to bring in, and also delete the stuff that we don't want them to have control over, so we can kind of manage, keep them from getting themselves in trouble, basically. So all we want here from this module are these 4 buttons, really. So how do we move them over? Most things in Composer, are right clickable. So the way to do this is just basically to right click the button. Now there's a couple things to look at in here. You can copy input 1 button to control screen. We've got our bar already made. We can copy that over, and that gives us one of the buttons, just one of them. We can right click 2 and copy that over as well if you wanted to. Or we can just copy over the entire layout, which is what I usually do because it's a big time saver. So if we copy the entire layout to the screen, now we get the entire module coming over. So let me just kill off this first button. Now we only really need these buttons, 1, 2, 3, and 4 here. So let's just delete the other stuff. Everything came over as an object that becomes kind of individual once you bring it over. So we can break up the module, hit delete on that. And from this point, we can just bring them up. And we'll probably want to arrange them, make them larger. This is a touch screen, of course, so then the objects need to be big enough people can actually touch them and manipulate them, right? So these buttons are very tiny. Oops. Let's go ahead. I'm going to highlight all these 4 buttons. and do a little resize action on them. These ones don't have handles. It's really just the text boxes, I believe, that have the handles. So we can go over here and type our, sizes, or I'm just going to do the shift, holding shift and use the arrow keys just to save some time. So let's resize these guys so they can get their fingers on the controls. All right, and let's kind of arrange them so they're equidistant from each other. Okay, cool. So we could just leave these as they are and just like change the text on the buttons, which you can do. Right now we just got a 1, 2, 3, 4, which tells the end user nothing about what these sources actually are. So we could go over here, change our on text and off text. We could have this say satellite or something like that. We can go in and change the font to custom with auto size and make it really big. So that's totally legit, something you can totally do. I like to do, I want to throw some images on here just to make it look nicer, I guess, more custom, and also give a chance to show you guys how to do it, work with symbols. So we'll get to the label part in a bit here, actually. But first, let's change the look of the buttons themselves. We could leave these buttons as they are again, but we can make them look a lot cooler. So to change how they look by default, like they're from their default rather, let's just click all of them. We're going to change all of them at the same time. But I'm holding control click is how I'm highlighting all these guys. And if we go over to display type, right now it's showing text. And what we want to do is change this to symbol. And that will give us a way to import some images to use for the on and off states of these buttons. We do need to have two separate images, one for the button on and one for the button off. As you can see here, we have a couple fields we got to fill up now with some symbols. So let's start with the on symbol. If we click on this down arrow here, we hit edit, and this opens up our symbol selector window. When we use the custom option here in the symbol fonts area, we're able to create a totally custom library of images to use in this site file. So we can pack this up with whatever we want from our computer, basically. So let's just start by importing an image. So we go down to import image here, and we can just browse to wherever we have our symbols on our computer. So I've got a few things laid out here already. For some reason, this thing is not showing me the previews. There we go. Okay, so we are looking for in our SymVue buttons. Come on. There we go. So I believe we want to go to this folder. These will be available. I'll point you guys to where you can find these, by the way, at the end. But yeah, let's use this one for our on. This is going to be our button on. So let's go ahead and hit open on that. And yeah, we'll just make that default. And now here it is. It is now filling slot 1 in our symbol library here. So let's just hit OK on that. And now this button, because this one happens to be in its on state, it's now showing our on button here. These guys, we haven't picked one for the off state, so there's nothing here showing quite yet. Let's do the same thing for the off symbol, and then we'll go from there. So same deal, edit. This time you want to choose slot 2. If you do slot 1, we'll overwrite this button, so make sure you click a different slot here. Import, and I'm looking for the preview. If this thing will show it to me, that would be great. I believe it's this gray one. I'm just going to wing it. I think that's the one. Yep, that looks like the deal. Hit OK on that. And now these guys are showing the off state of the button. Okay, so we're almost there with these buttons as far as look and feel. We still have this ugly background. It's kind of the remnant from the old button, Right now we're still using the old button. We've just put a skin on it, basically. So we can go, again, with these all highlighted, we can go down to background color on these buttons, and we want to make it transparent. And that's going to hide that ugly background. And now we just have our images only. So that's going to look a lot better. So this is actually a good place to mention edit mode, because you notice the borders here, we got the red borders around these objects. That means we're in edit mode. You can always tell as well by the dots you have on the background here on the canvas. That means the control screen is in edit mode. And as the name implies, this is the mode you'll be in while you manipulate things while you're in the design phase, right? But in this mode, you won't get a good idea of how things are actually working as far as moving the controls and pushing the buttons from the end user perspective, right? So as I'm building these screens, I'm basically constantly cycling between edit and the non-edit modes to check my work, basically. So let's do that now so we can check out how our buttons work. There's a few ways to do it. You can just right-click down here or just basically anywhere, and you can disable control layout edit mode. And now the borders on our objects are gone. And now we can actually click on these things as if they're real controls now. And you can see our source selector is following our button pushes and all that. The shortcut for edit mode, by the way, is F9. As I'm building, I usually have my finger on F9 the whole time so I can just constantly cycle back and forth. I think you can hit it also from the tools menu, by the way. Edit mode here. As usual, there's a few different paths. All right, so let me see if there's any questions coming in here. T5 table mount. Oh, there's a question if the T5 table mount has a different size. No, it's the same T5. It's just a different mount that the same T5 lives in. So nothing different resolution-wise there. Okay, let's get back to making stuff here. We probably need to, label these buttons so people know what they're selecting, right? So let's start by doing, I mentioned earlier, I like to do pictures for this kind of thing. You don't have to, obviously, but at the very least, I like to drag in a text object and make it a cool font at the very least. What we'll do is we'll do some symbols again. So let's go back to our toolkit here and drag in another text object. And again, here's our text properties we saw earlier. We don't actually want a text here at all. We want to use a symbol in this case. So it's going to be sort of similar to what we did with our buttons as far as bringing in the symbol object from a symbol library. So we'll choose symbol here, do a select symbol here, and here's our familiar symbol selector for the site file. This lives in the site file, basically. These images do. Let's choose our third slot that's empty. We're going to import. And let's go back to, let's see. Yeah, we're going to start with, our first input is our satellite 1, 2, BGM, and Bluetooth. So let's just start with satellite 1. I have an image here. You can't see it because Windows is not cooperating with me, but here it is. We'll hit open on that. And there's our new default folder, sure. And there is the image we just imported, kind of just a light gray picture of a satellite dish. I'm going to go ahead and import the rest of them while we're in here. We might as well just kill a few birds with one stone. Let's go to slot 4 and import satellite 2's image. There's that. Let's go in and import a Bluetooth image. And that will do. I'm going to show you a different thing for the BGM input, just to show you another way of doing things. So this first text object that we dragged in is going to be for satellite 1. So I'm just going to make sure I click on satellite 1 image and hit OK. And again, background should definitely be transparent for these. And let me expand this out a bit. And let's just throw it on top of our button. I'm going to do the shift arrow key thing, hit F9, just make sure it's good and centered. That looks pretty good. Now, one thing you're probably wondering why this exclamation point is showing up here. Well, it says it when you put your mouse over it, but the image that I imported, they're actually pretty big. The resolution is pretty large on those. And this is saying that, it's especially for something like T5, if you have an image, it's actually loading the full image and then having to scale it. So it's having to do a bit of extra work to scale it down, from this down to this. So it's just warning you that, you can do this, but if you add up a lot of these, you might end up with maybe a little bit slower operation potentially if you add up enough of these. You're going to be fine with like the 4 that we're going to do. But as you add up a ton of these, like, you might start getting a little bit laggy or something like that. So it's probably a good idea to have smaller images than what I have here, just in in a nutshell. Like this is pretty overkill, obviously. So just a quick general rule there. Let's get that centered. F9 it. Okay, good enough. All right, let's do the other ones. Something I do often, once I've got something that appears the way I like it, basically, and I know that I want to do other objects that are similar to it, instead of rebuilding the wheel and dragging in a new text object every single time, I'll just hit the thing that I like, the one that we just made, and I'll just duplicate it. So you can do that by right-clicking, hit duplicate, or Control D, that's the shortcut. And then we can go into this guy. Now we just move that in place. And all we have to do now is we can click on this object and just change its symbol. This one's going to be satellite 2. Let's hit edit. And here's our satellite 2 option right here. Hit OK on that, and now we have our fresh image here. So let's do, the third button is actually going to be the background music, and I wanted to show you guys a different way to do it. Let's see, you know what, let's actually do this. Let's actually do the Bluetooth really quick. It's the same process, so let's just stay on that for a second. I'm going to duplicate this again. We'll move this down, and let's change the properties on it. And we'll choose our Bluetooth image here. And that's a little wonky, so let's do a little adjustment on that. Okay, that looks pretty good. And let's do our last button here. So this one, background music, we need an image for background music. There is a library of icons that you can use online. So Windows should have a font called, a font in its font library called Font Awesome, as it's known. And let me just drag in a text object, one here. Let's kill this. So if we do select font, I'm just going to type it in, shortcut it. So Font Awesome, this should be default on most computers. This is something you can actually copy and paste icons from Font Awesome's website. You can paste it in as an object and it'll actually give you an icon. So I'll just show you the process. Let's go to a browser. I'm already on fontawesome.com, their website. If we just search like music or something like that. And here's an icon we could use. These are like, there's a bunch you can like upgrade and pay for and stuff. Here's a freebie right here. Go to music, and here's an icon. Now, if you go up to here, you can copy the Unicode glyph. And all you got to do is just click this on their website, and it copies it to your computer for you. If we go back to Composer, we can now paste this icon into our text field, which looks like just a dot. It doesn't really tell you anything, right? But if we hit OK on that, there's our icon that we just copied from there, from Font Awesome. So as long as you have the font selected, if you have Font Awesome selected as your font, then you can paste those glyphs into your text field and it should populate with the actual icon. So just a little trick if you're looking for something quick, a quick icon, you can go out, just grab some of those. We do obviously need to make this thing larger so we can actually see it. So let's just try something, 24. We'll go a little bit bigger. Let's try this, go crazy, 36, okay. And let's make the text color something like the others, kind of a light gray. And there we go. So that's just kind of another path to getting some images on your buttons. Let's do a little centering action on that. By the way, something to show you guys, if you have an image that's not perfectly centered and you're importing it, it might end up looking a little wonky, in your text box, and you just can't seem to get the thing centered properly. You can actually go into the size and position in here, and you can kind of mess with the offset. Sorry, it's under the text area, the offsets here. So take a look at the note as I do this. I'm going to type in 100 offset. It's going to move it 100 pixels to the right within that text box, or outside it. In this case, we went pretty far, but you can if you need to kind of bump things a little bit, if we do like -10, it should move up a little bit. So that's another way to kind of edge things in if you're not quite able to get it through the normal way. One thing you should know, since we're kind of at the end of the labels here, you'll notice that, well, these labels are actually stacked on top of the buttons now, so there's layering going on. So if we go out of edit mode and I try to click on these things, it's not going to work in Composer because there's a text box, there's a layer on top of the button itself. If we click over here, it's going to work because um, you know, the label doesn't extend that far. So we're over here, we're clicking on the button. So just FYI, you know, in here we're clicking on the label because it's layered on top. Once you export this thing, finalize your screen and export it through the SymVue export wizard, which we'll get to at the end, these text labels will be automatically converted to be able to be clicked through. So these, on the actual control screens, this will not be a problem. You'll be able to click anywhere on these buttons and they will function. It's just within Composer, because you're editing and stuff, it keeps the layers intact. So just FYI, so you're not thrown for a loop on that. All right, let me see if there's any other questions so far. Not yet. Cool, let's keep building this thing. So that's our source select, that's all done. Let's go over to the toolkit and I'm gonna drag in a picture this time. And because we're going to want to throw in, the jukebox override and some Bluetooth pairing, some volume and some mute stuff, right? So I like to divide things up. It's just the way my brain works, just to make it look intuitive and not have a jumble of controls all over the place, right? So I have built some little divider type things, some little lines and stuff like that to use as dividers between different groups of controls. So if I bring this guy in as a picture, this is just something I whipped up in Photoshop, nothing crazy. If we go to edit mode, you can see it. It's just kind of a 3D-ish looking divider line, basically. We can just toss that right there, and that kind of differentiates our controls over here from what's going to be over here to the right. So let's start with adding a jukebox override LED to show them that the jukebox is in action. So let's go over to back to our design. Easiest place to grab that LED we're looking for is from the priority selector. When this LED is lit up, that means the jukebox is on. So we can use that guy as our indicator. So we just right click that LED and copy just that LED. There's no need to do the entire layout thing if we're just grabbing one thing from this module. So we'll just copy this one LED over to our bar screen. And let's get that out of the way. And here's what we have. LEDs can only be 40 by 40 pixels, by the way. This is as big as they get. Let's hit the properties sheet on it. And I'm not personally a fan of having the text on the LED itself, the text that comes attached to it. So I always hide that. I always just go over here and delete it. And then I'll just make this a square. And let's go ahead. We can also change the LED color as well, right? It defaults to green. This particular one does. We can change it to custom, red or custom. Since we got blue going on as a theme, let's roll with a custom LED that's blue. And we can change that to blue over here. And there's our blue LED. Let's just place that here for the moment. And let's give a label on it just so the guys using this thing know what this LED is for, right? We can drag in a text object again from over here. As I mentioned before, well, actually, you know what? I'm going to do it one more time so you get the process. Let's just drag in the text. And we'll just call this juke override. Kill off the auto size, transparent, so it remembered my settings. We hit OK. And again, we have our usual text object that needs to be modified a bit so it looks good. So let's go to our font over here in the properties sheet. We'll hit Orbitron again, keep it consistent. Go bold. And I'm actually not sure what to pick here. Let's just go with 18 and see what happens. Let's make it white so we can see it. And what do we got? All right, so that works. It's a bit wide because we're going to want to put some other stuff over here. So what I would do is we can turn on multi-line over here. So if we go like this, I'll just show you really quick. If I go like this, or if I make it really small, it just gets cut off, right? There is an option in here for multi-line. So when we change this to true and we shrink our box, it's now going to start stacking it up. which is a nice feature. So we're going to take advantage of that. And we can just put that somewhere around this area. And I want to make sure that that is centered under the LED. I'm going to actually widen that a teeny bit, or shrink it rather. I like to keep things centered, so I'll click on multiple objects and just make sure that this LED is actually centered underneath this box. Just something I do as I go along typically. Okay, that's it for the override. That's pretty straightforward, simple. Let's do the Bluetooth pairing button. So just to start off with, I mentioned earlier that I like to duplicate objects. Once I've got something that I like the look of, there's no point in rebuilding it again. Let's just duplicate it. And we can just put that down a little bit, and we can actually just double click in here and change the text directly. We'll just change it to pair, and that's going to be our Bluetooth pairing thing here. So we'll leave that for a second, and let's just go grab the button that we want and bring it in. So that's going to be on the, that's controlling the XIO Bluetooth, right? So we want to hit the intelligent module for that. And we have this pair button right here, pair now. Right click it, and we'll copy just this screen, or just this pair now button rather, it's the bar screen here. And we can just put this down here. Just kind of like resize it roughly so it's a little bit bigger. Again, you know, they need to be able to hit it. Something like that will work. Obviously, we want to make it look good. So let's go ahead and do the same thing we did earlier and change our display type to symbol. And let's change the on symbol. This will take us into our library again. Let's do a new slot, import an image. And I'm going to go dive into our symbols here again. We'll go with the aluminum round situation, Bluetooth. And right now we're selecting the on symbol. So, man, I really wish it would show me these previews over here. Let's see, large icons. It's only showing me a couple for some reason. I think we want to do, we might have to just take a stab at it. For the on, looking for a blue one. Blue, blue, black, black. Well, heck with it, let's just hit one. Oh, I got lucky, that's the one, that's the on. We'll use that for on. And let's import the off while we're in here. This is probably it. No, it's not, but that's okay. We can use that one, that's fine. Oh, there's a question, if possible, can we download this composer example file and SymVue? Yes, indeed. This file and stuff will be available with the once the video is uploaded later, so for sure. If you want it sooner, shoot me an email for sure. All right, so the on symbol, let's actually use this one because it looks like it's on. It looks like it's pressed in, I would say. And then for the off side, the off symbol, let's go ahead and use this other one. And now we're faced with our ugly background again. Let's go ahead and do the same thing, make it transparent. And now we have a good functional button. If we click it, we can see our pair now button over here following. So that's cool. Let's get this guy. So again, the whole centering thing that I like to do. These are all, you know, let's just get things arranged a bit so the whole deal is centered a little better. So if I control click on all these objects, everybody's lined up, that looks good. Excuse me. So last thing, let's grab the status. So this will update to show if it's connected or not once we're online and all that, you know. So we can grab this status indicator from the intelligent module and throw that onto our control screen for the Bluetooth status. We'll right click this field, copy that to the bar. And these guys, let's just kind of arrange them something like this. And obviously we'll want to read it. So we'll control click both of those and go to the properties to hit both those at the same time. Just make it lighter so we can see it. And I think for the font, let's just do the auto size. And it'll just kind of fill up the space for us. Maybe this one, let's make it a bit bigger. There we go. That's probably good enough. at least for now here. And so come out of edit mode, things are looking good. Let's work with our volumes. So again, I'm going to use this divider right here to separate these controls. So I'm going to just Control D, duplicate, and there's that. Just arrow key it over, and that looks pretty. Let's move it over one. So that looks pretty good and centered. Let's do the volume. So for the volume control, again, let's just duplicate the text that we like, throw it over here, double click it, change it to volume, and that should do the trick for the moment. Now the volume is going to be a little bit different. It's going to be a different type of object because, of course, it's a fader. So we're going to grab that from our gain block here for the bar. So this, we could just right-click directly on this fader and just copy this one thing over. Whoops, copy, just the fader only. But we want more than that. We want the mute, which we could just copy that over now. But I want to show you another way to do it too while we're here. So let me kill off that fader. If you right-click in the blank spot, like kind of in the channel strip here, it puts see that box that goes around just channel 1. We can copy channel 1 controls now to the bar, and that'll give us this whole grouped together, strip of controls just for channel 1. So what I'm going to do is do that, close that for the moment. And these are all grouped together. They're kind of just glued together here. So if you right-click it, we don't want all this stuff, right? We don't want to give them control over like inverting the phase. Why would they want to do that? We don't need to solo. So we can right-click this object, and then we can break it apart. We can ungroup the controls. And now they're in individual pieces, see? So we can just go in here and delete the things we don't want them to see or have control over. So all we want is volume, mute, and we might as well give them a field here that gives them a readout as well. So let's start with the fader. We can resize this guy. I personally am not a fan of this as much, especially for a touch screen. It's better to have a button, like an up-down button kind of thing. We could do it this way, but for a touch screen, yeah, I think the pressing is just a bit better. So we can edit this fader to change it. So if you look at the style over here, fader properties, right? Right now it's a vertical fader. We've got some different options in here you can tweak around with. We've got knobs, and those are the options we've always had. The newer stuff is the up-down options. Let's stretch that out. So what that'll do is turn it into as you can see from the dB field here, as I change it, the default is 1 dB increment and decrement. This is what we want to do, is use these up-down buttons. Way better on touch screens. So if we go back to edit mode, we do want to change it because I don't think the plus minus is all that cool looking personally. We can go in here and tweak a lot of stuff on this. We can go in here and change the actual increment and decrement amount. Maybe you want to do 3 dB steps, something like that. You can change that here. And so now we're changing in 3 dB steps. Tweak that to your heart's content. But what we want to do here is we want to change what this looks like. So the button text mode right now is just default plus minus. Let's change that to bitmap. And we can do some symbol action here, kind of similar to what we did earlier. Whoa, hold on, I clicked something. Okay. So since there's 2 buttons, each one of these needs an on-off state. Just like these other buttons, they have an on-off state, of course. So it kind of gives us, the 4 buttons, the 2 buttons together with their 4 different states. Increment, up-down button, decrement, up-down button. Trying to move this over so we can read all that stuff. Okay, there we go. So yeah, we have the bitmap file pressed and unpressed basically. So let's start with the up button. So let's just go in here, click that, and I'm going to go into. We'll use the same library here. This is the up. We got some up options in here, and so I'm selecting the unpressed state. So keep that in mind. This is the off button. That's what we want. That's going to be our new default folder for the moment. So that's cool. Now we want to select the pressed button state image. hit it again, and now here we have one that's a little bit darker. It looks like it's been pushed in. And let's just do the decrements while we're here, then we can actually see what it looks like. So here's the decrement off state, button up, basically, or button up state. So the unpressed state, here's our down. New default folder, and let's go to our pressed state. And there's that. And then you can probably guess what's next. We want to make this transparent to get rid of the background. So let's go up to here, make this true. And now we have some nicer looking buttons here. We can kind of do a little resize on them. That'll probably be good enough. So let's go out of edit mode and see what we did. So now here's our, you can see we got our pressed state and our unpressed state. So that is all looking good. And these buttons are nice because they give a good like feedback to the user that like I'm actually pushing a button. So that's what's nice about having the on and off state thing. Okay, let's do a little bit more tweaking on this. First off, let's get our volume field centered over our up down. Let's work with our dB field down here. Let's just kind of just do a quick resize on it. It looks pretty ugly with the text all the way to the right, so we probably want to fix that. We click it under the text properties over here. We've got our horizontal alignment. Let's just center that. So that centers our dB field. It's pretty small. That's going to be really tiny on a T5. So let's make that. Let's just auto size it. Go to the font, custom with auto size, and boom. Now it fills the space for us. The text is dark. That works if you want to keep the background. This white background. That's totally cool. Obviously, you can read it. I like to make it transparent, which means we need to change our text to white again so we can actually see it. And there we go. Let's see, I believe a question just shot in here. Let me take a look at it here. Is it possible to change the fader style? Or can we only change it while it is in button mode? Yeah, I mean, we changed the fader style to, I'm not sure I understand the question, but we did change the fader style to actually make buttons available at all. Let me just show you again really quick to make sure we're clear. I'll just copy in a different one so I don't mess up the work we just did. I'm just gonna copy this other fader to the screen. So here's our basic fader right here. The fader style is over here. Right now the default is vertical fader. You can change that to horizontal. You can change it to a knob. You can change it to up, down, horizontal. Or what we just did for this one is up, down, vertical. So that's how you change fader style, and then you can tweak from there, as we just did, as far as the symbols. Hopefully that answers your question. If not, definitely shoot over a follow-up there. All right, let's look at the mute. Take care of that, make it look a little bit better. We'll just kind of stretch it out so they can actually control it, and well, we'll just put it there for now. Let's give it a symbol. Let's make it look better. So again, we go over to our display type, change it from text over to symbol. And we need that on and off state as usual. Let's go edit the on symbol here. Do an open slot here. And we want to find some mute buttons in here somewhere. And let's see what's lurking in here. Some speakers. Oh, they're not giving me previews again. Let's see here. What do I do? Extra large? Nope. Wonder why that is. Okay, so let me just read this, see if I can find one that is aluminum round mute. Let's see what that one is. That'll work. That could be our muted state with the red background. Let's find one that looks like it's off. Let's try this guy. That looks like it'll work. Cool. Okay, so right now we're doing our on symbol. So let's make sure we have the red one selected. We'll hit OK. Nothing shows up over here because the button's not on. If we turn it on, it'll of course turn on. So let's go finish that job. Let's go to the off symbol now for that and give it that silver one we just selected right here. And there's that. And now, of course, we want to make a transparent background. And there we go. We could just put that wherever is convenient for now. That'll work. That's basically it. The last thing we want to do on this screen, we mentioned earlier having an LED or a meter, to show some level going on. Let's just throw that in. That's pretty easy to do. We just go back out here. Easiest spot. We could grab just the signal LED from here. I think that's not as cool looking personally. So let's just grab a meter from the analog output. That's the quickest way to grab that. Right click it, copy to control screen and to the bar, control screen. And we can just resize that really quick. Something like that should be just fine. And that is it. Let me see if there's a question here. I see. Yeah, there's a comment from one of the guys here. It's actually a really cool idea to show feedback to people as they adjust an up and down fader. You could have a control meter that lives next to this. Maybe even instead of having this dB field, because honestly, what end user knows what dB actually means? You could just have like a gas gauge that kind of just fills up and goes down as you move the control. And his way of doing that was to, let me just show you really quick, was to put a fader control number. Let's just put in whatever number on here, 39 say, and we could actually link that. We're going off the rails a little bit, but that's okay. This is a good one. We go to control inputs, one input control number, and we just type in that same number that we just attached to that fader, 39. And now that, now we have a control level coming, that is basically synced up with this fader that they have control over, right? So we can now do something with this signal here. And what we're going to do is go into control accessories and grab a control meter. And all this is going to do is just, as the fader, because this 39 is synced up with this 39, this control meter is going to follow the fader, which is pretty cool. If we copy that over to the control screen, it's just kind of the same stuff we just did in terms of getting that set up. We could put this next to the, maybe here instead, make it thin, and put it next to our up down, just to give it a little gas gauge. All right, little tangent there, but a worthy one. So we are done with this control screen. We don't have time to build all of them, the rest of the zone, so I'm going to go ahead and skip. I'm going to open up a new site file that has all these things done already, and then we'll go from there. Again, if you need to refresh on how we did this, it'll be available, so we don't need to keep building the same stuff over and over again. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this file out, and probably just in my history here. Complete. Okay. So let's take a look at what we got in here. Same file. I'm going to open Control Screen Manager, and things are finished here for the most part. Let's just take the tour really quick. We'll do a view. This looks a little bit different. I chose a different button at the time, but it's the same vibe. That's the bar. Here's the restaurant, pretty much the same. And here's the other areas. This one doesn't, we don't need to have the Bluetooth or anything like that. So we just have, like I mentioned earlier, that all these extra zones would have a single source selector for all zones, and then individual volume controls, which we have here. So that is the quick rundown on those other screens. And that's great. What we've got is great. But the thing that's lacking is a way to navigate between these different screens, right? On whatever device is hosting them. So, well, that's the next step, is a way to get around, because right now we're actually stuck in this screen. We have no way to go home, or nowhere to go from here. So we need to build build a bit of a framework for that. So that's the next step. Let's build that navigation system. So that's typically done by building like a home screen of sorts. So let's go back to Control Screen Manager, and we'll do a new screen from here. We'll just call it Home. And yeah, this is going to be kind of the main default home screen. So let's go View and Close. And what we're going to do is repeat the process that we did at the beginning. Let's go to the Properties sheet here for this guy. Go to the sheet size, hit T5. Here's our lines. And of course, we want to do the same thing we did before. Let's get that background, or we're actually going to do a different background on this one because this is kind of the main home screen. So we want to give them an intuitive way to select their their screens. So first, let's just use a custom bitmap again. We'll make that true. Choose a new bitmap. Hit the symbols. Here's a floor plan. This is basically the same one we looked at earlier from the PowerPoint. If we use that as our backdrop, well, that's something intuitive. That's the restaurant they work at. They can just click on whatever zone they want to control, and we can make that take them to the right screen, right? So we can change the background a little bit too. I'm a fan of the darker stuff. Whatever, that'll work for now. Yeah, from here basically, we need to build some buttons to take us to these different screens, because right now this goes nowhere, obviously. Let's get back into edit mode. So something you want to look at in the toolkit, once it comes time to start building your navigation system, basically, you go to the toolkit and you go to the control screen viewer selection up here in the toolkit. And this will automatically populate as you start building more and more screens. Those automatically show up as options in here. So these are buttons. So if we drag in the bar button, now we end up with this green button, and we can just resize that to cover our bar zone. And so if we click this right now, it's going to take us to the bar. I don't want to do it quite yet because we don't have a way to get back yet. But what I am going to do is, I mean, obviously this is not what we want it to look like. It's ugly. We just need to click it and do the properties and do the usual transparency. And we also want to get rid of, I usually just change the display type to bar, because as you can see, it still has the name of the control screen in it. Let's just change that to symbol really quick, and then we won't use a symbol. So that blanks it out for us. And we can just move that on top of that zone. So whenever they touch that T5, touch anywhere in the bar, it's going to take them to the right screen. Okay. So we're going to do the same thing for the other areas. So let's go to the toolkit, do the same for the restaurant. And let's just do the same thing for the other areas. That's going to be hallway and restrooms. We might as well just go like this, cover the whole thing. I'm going to duplicate this other areas one, because the foyer also needs to go to that same screen for its volume control. So we can do something like this. And then we can control click all these and go transparent and make them a symbol. So now they're totally clean. We go out of edit mode. You'd never know there's buttons floating on top here. So if we click on the bar now here we are at the bar. So great. Now we have no way to get back to the home screen though. So once they go to the bar, they're stuck again. So now we have to build some home buttons. Same process. So we go to the toolkit. Here's our home screen button. Drag it in, and there's that. I'm going to make it pretty really quick. Change it to a symbol. Same process as earlier. And I'm going to import. I have a home button right here. We'll use that, and we'll make it transparent. And that's it. We can just kind of duck that over there. And now we hit home, and we're back. So now we have a way to navigate. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm actually going to copy this home button, because this is going to be the same on all the screens. We want a home button that takes them home. So we can just copy that object. And let's go to the other areas. Go to edit mode. I'll just go ahead and paste it, move it over, go home, and we'll go do the same for the restaurant. paste that object again, and that's it. I think that's pretty much it for these screens. Honestly, there's a couple bonus things I'll show you really quick, but this really kind of gets us what we want. On the home screen, I like to do, you guys have probably seen this before, possibly if you've talked to me. In diagnostics module, every DSP has a diagnostics module, and it's got a lot of stuff in here, you know, power rails, temperature stuff. There's also this connected LED over here, which is really useful when the DSP is online or located, you know, it's gonna flash. And that's a good kind of heartbeat. That's a good like indicator to the end user that the screen is connected and it's working. So we can copy that over to the home screen. And there's that. And we can just kind of toss this down here. And you can do the usual custom LED stuff if you'd like. I'm not going to go into that. We already did it earlier. So there's that kind of a confidence monitor for them, I guess you could say. You know, I'd probably actually make the font a little bit bigger so they could see it on the T5. But that's about it. Another cool thing, which not many people know about, I think, is do you have, you know, maybe you want to give them like some custom, like they want to know what time it is, you know, on their control screen. We can put time and stuff really easily in there. And there's certain objects you can use to do that super easy. If we drag in a text object, we got the usual text stuff here, but there's also this enable date and time special characters checkbox. If you hit that, then you can type in some special characters in here that will unlock the ability to give you the time and date and stuff on here. If you hit the info button, it gives you the key to that. So if you type in any one of these characters, it's going to give you, you know, what it says. So we're going to do a %C. That's going to give the date and time for where they are, whatever locale they're in. So if we type %C, hit OK, that automatically gives us our date and time. So for that, of course, to fit on here, let's go ahead and change this. We can do the old Orbitron thing to make it consistent with the rest of the system. And we probably want to do a multi-line as well. You know, you can tweak that more obviously, but that's good enough for now. So that's it. That is all of the whole control screen system here. Somebody's asking, are lines or will lines be part of the symbol library? You know, those are things that I made for myself, and I haven't made them. They're not available yet in that package. I'll show you guys where those are at, but we might be able to add those in without too much headache. So I'll try and keep you posted on that. But if you want those, reach out and I'll get them to you directly. No problem there for the time being. So, all right, we're almost done here. The final step is to actually export this to the device we want to host the screens on. It's done the same way for all the devices for the most part, at least as far as Composer is concerned. But let me first do this. Something you guys should know, by the way, now that I'm right-clicking and seeing this option. If you right-click, notice how we've got our dotted lines and then we got a bunch of blank space around here. If you want to just kind of like, for your own brain when you're done, if you want to see what it would look like, you can size the window to the sheet size and it'll just shrink it down to where the dotted lines were, so you can kind of just see where you're at. So that's just a quick, helpful right-click option. Okay, back to the exporting to the control screens, to T5 or whatever. There's a couple ways to export. So you can right-click on like a blank spot on the screen, and you can export to SymVue. Or you can go up to, again, Control Screen Manager, and you can click on your home screen that you want to start on. Typically, you want to click on like your home screen and export from there. So we'll do that. We'll export from here. And this takes us to the export wizard. So there's a few different options in here. You've got SymVue for Windows. You've got SymVue for Control Server, which I don't have one in this site file, which is why that's grayed out. But and then there's also a T5 option, touchscreen. It's basically the same method for all of them. Honestly, it's really pretty straightforward. So let's just do the T5. We'll just step through the screens, hit next. So this is the panel selection screen. This is basically we exported from the home screen, right? We highlighted home, hit export, and this is showing us all the other screens that are referenced by home. And what that means, that's the navigation system that we built. If we hadn't built that navigation system, this would be blank. There wouldn't be anything here. So this is, if we wanted to like not give them access to the restaurant, we could just uncheck that, and the restaurant button wouldn't work anymore. It wouldn't take them to the restaurant screen. So this just gives you some control over what they can see and can't see. Typically you have them all selected because you built them for a reason. You want them to access them. So hit next on here. You can do panel security. You can lock it down per screen. You can do a PIN, 4-digit PIN for each. And this screen, I'm actually going to cancel for a second and go to site view so we can see this. So just stand by for a second. All right, so let me just go do a re-export really quick. Move that out of the way. Okay, and we'll go back to where we were. Hardware connection screen is where we were. So this is telling the touchscreen or SymVue how it should talk to the DSP, because it has to communicate with the actual, in this case, a Radius NX. So it's going to reference the IP address of the DSP that's in the site file, the located DSP. So it's important to know that, because if you have DHCP turned on and maybe next month, whatever, however long it takes, like this IP address is no longer attached to this DSP. Maybe it's a .170 gets handed to a printer or something like that. Your control is not going to work anymore because it's looking for that .170 and it's no longer there as a DSP anyway. So oftentimes you'll want to lock it down, set a static IP on your DSP, for instance, so that never changes. That's probably a good safety measure to take with these things. Another option is to hit advanced. This is useful if you're designing ahead of time at the office or something like that and you're not there with the hardware, but maybe what the subnet's going to be on site, but you don't know what the actual IP address is yet, the DSP on site. So you could do this advanced option, and just as long as you know what the subnet is, the touchscreen will find the DSP based on its name, as long as it's got the subnet correct. So that's another option. Typical, obviously it's named typical for a reason. That's what most people do, and that's totally fine. So typically, yeah, we'll just do that and hit next. And this is the last screen. More often than not, while you're doing this process, you want to go online as part of it. You don't have to, but when you're exporting these screens, the last thing that it's going to happen is it's going to assign control numbers to every single button and fader that we threw into these control screens. So you do have to tell the DSP that. You have to program those control numbers into the DSP. So you're going to want to go online one way or another, whether now or you push later. That needs to happen. So, and you can tell it, which number you want it to start from. Maybe you want it to start from 1000 for some reason, if you're keeping 1 through 999 for restaurant control or something like that, or whatever you want to have reservations. You can just tell it where to automatically assign those numbers on the control screens from. Then of course, export to the touchscreen. That's the whole point. We want to export that to our T5. If you had multiples, you could select which T5 you want to send it to. And then you can just hit finish from here. And at that point, it's just going to push the file and do the usual stuff. So I'm not going to bother doing that. You get the idea on that, but you just push the file. At that point, it's also going to transfer it over to the T5, and then you should be good to go. I do want to show you, we're pretty much wrapping up, so if you guys have any questions, throw them in quick here. I do want to show you where I got all those symbols from. They're on a website, on our website. Let's go to Symetrix.co. I'll just show you where to go from the get-go. I just saw something come in, by the way, a question, T10. Yeah, the T10 will be the same process, exact same process. Obviously, it's not quite out yet, but soon. But literally the same exact thing we did. So yeah, to find the symbols on our website, just go to the search bar, quickest way to do it. SymVue symbols, it'll take you right there. And you can download the entire package of all those symbols that we were looking at. It's pretty, I think it's like a gig or something. It's a pretty big download if I recall. You can also grab the Photoshop files of those if you want to do any edits to those. You'll have the Photoshop files with layers and all that you can tweak. All right, guys. I don't see any more questions coming in. That's all we've got for today. So we didn't get to do all the things that can be done with control screens, but we covered a large portion of what you do in most designs. So again, yeah, this webinar was recorded and it will be available to rewatch soon. If you want to get your hands on the site file ahead of time, shoot me an email. It will be available along with that webinar. That when this webinar is uploaded, there should be a link for this site file as well. In the meantime, hit us up at support@symetrix.co. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Thanks again, and signing off. All right, guys, take care.